History remembers Nanny of the Maroons, the woman who defied muskets and bayonets with courage and cunning. To the British redcoats, she was a nightmare. To her people, she was a mother, a strategist, and a flame of freedom. But legends are never carried by one alone. In the mountains where Nanny's voice carried, another warrior was listening, learning, and rising. She studied Nanny's strength. She modeled her defiance. And when she took the horn to her lips, the hills shook with a sound the empire had never feared before. They called her General Abeng, keeper of the horn. Whilst the British trembled at Nanny's name, Abeng unleashed parallel strikes, raging like a storm through the forests. Two flames now burned against the empire, each feeding the other, each impossible to silence. Tell us below where in the world you are watching from, and please subscribe if you haven't already. History remembers the name of Nanny of the Maroons. She was the firebrand who stood against the greatest empire of her time, a woman whose leadership shook the foundations of British rule in the Caribbean. To the redcoats, she was not merely an opponent, she was a terror. They marched with muskets and bayonets, armored in the belief that no one could withstand their discipline, their numbers, or their cannons. Yet in the thick forests and hidden valleys, they found themselves undone by a woman who understood freedom better than they understood war. Nanny's defiance was not built on brute force, but on cunning, resilience, and vision. She trained her people in guerrilla warfare long before the term existed. She turned the mountains into fortresses and the forests into weapons. Every tree was a shield, every shadow a soldier, and every silence a trap waiting to spring. But what history records is one name often hides the many who walked in her path. In the echoes of Nanny's horn calls, another figure was rising. She was younger, less known, but no less fierce. She studied Nanny not from scrolls or books but from the living example of resistance. She watched how the matriarch rallied fighters, how she carried herself in council, and how she turned despair into strength. This woman would come to be known not by her birth name, but by the sound that defined her, the Abeng, the horn that called warriors to arms. She became General Abeng, keeper of the horn. Whilst Nanny stood as a living legend, General Abeng modeled herself on the same courage and fire. She was not a copy, but an extension, a second flame ignited from the first. Her people said that when she raised the Abeng to her lips, the hills themselves seemed to breathe. One blast meant rally, two blasts meant strike. And when the long, mournful note cut through the night, it was a warning to the British. The redcoats had come to fear Nanny's ambushes, but they soon realized they were not fighting one storm alone. As British troops marched to confront the Maroons in one valley, reports of parallel attacks emerged from another. Villages that had seemed defenseless suddenly turned into traps. Convoys of supplies vanished into the mountains. Redcoat patrols returned with half their numbers, their eyes haunted not only by the sight of shadows in the trees, but by the echo of a horn that seemed to follow them everywhere. General Abeng waged war like a phantom. No one could predict where she would strike. Some swore they saw her moving with impossible speed, appearing in two places at once. Others whispered that the Abeng was not just a horn but a spirit weapon, summoning ancestors to shield her fighters from bullets. Myths grew with every clash. And in the terror of empire soldiers, those myths became as real as any musket ball. To her followers, she was a leader molded in the image of Nanny, but forged with her own edge. Nanny was the strategist, the great mother, the flame that first lit the rebellion. Abeng was the storm, sudden, violent, unpredictable, and unyielding. Together they created a nightmare the British could neither contain nor explain. When the redcoats retreated from one battlefield, it was not victory alone that hounded them. It was the knowledge that somewhere, unseen, the horn might sound again. The Abeng was more than a signal. It was a reminder that the empire was not invincible. For every march, there was a countermarch. For every gunshot, there was a warrior rising in defiance. For every attempt to crush resistance, the sound of the horn answered with a vow. And so, while Nanny's name entered history books as the indomitable leader of the Maroons, General Abeng's legend lived in whispers. Her story is not written in treaties or official documents, but in the fears of redcoat diaries, in the oral histories passed down by elders, and in the spirit of every fighter who dared to challenge oppression. She remains half myth, half memory, a shadow who chose to stand beside a flame, amplifying it until the British understood they were not facing one woman, but an entire people embodied in many forms. The Empire could not comprehend it. To them, Nanny was already more than enough to handle. Yet, as they advanced deeper into Maroon lands, they realized she was not alone. The horn of Abeng rang out from unseen hills, echoing in valleys where no soldiers stood, reminding the redcoats that resistance had multiplied. History may crown Nanny the mother of resistance, but the imagined tale of General Abeng, the keeper of the horn, teaches us a deeper truth. That courage is contagious. That one spark can ignite many flames. That when a people rise, they do not rise alone. So remember this, whilst the British trembled at Nanny's name, another storm was raging. A storm led by a woman who modeled herself on Nanny's defiance, who carried the horn as both weapon and warning. She was never meant to replace Nanny, but to amplify her. Two voices, two flames, two forces of nature tearing at the very fabric of empire. And though the written records may be silent, the mountains remember. The forests remember. The echo of the horn still carries, the sound of freedom that no army could silence. She was called General Abeng, and she was the keeper of the horn. General Abeng was not born into command. She was born into struggle. Like many in the mountains, her earliest memories were of survival, food gathered in secret, fires hidden from the smoke of British patrols, whispers instead of songs. Yet even in hardship, she absorbed lessons that would shape her destiny. From Nanny and the Maroons, she learned that freedom was not simply granted, it was seized, defended, and lived. The forest became her classroom. The hills were her walls, and the rivers her teachers. She watched how the Maroon warriors moved unseen, how they vanished into bamboo thickets, how they struck swiftly then melted away as if swallowed by the earth. But while others copied the tactics of the elders, Abeng sought to amplify them. She asked questions others feared to ask. What if the enemy heard two horns instead of one? What if resistance came not from one valley, but from many? What if freedom was fought like a storm, striking from every side at once? Her answer was the horn. The Abeng was more than a tool to her. It became her vow. In her hands, it carried the spirit of her people, their memories of capture and their hunger for liberty. Its sound meant unity. Its echoes meant war. In council fires, she began to stand and speak. Her voice was young, but carried a conviction that silenced even seasoned fighters. She declared that the fight must not rely on Nanny alone, for an empire as vast as Britain would not fall from a single flame. They needed many leaders, many centers of fire, many echoes of resistance. So she took her first steps as a commander. Small bands at first, young warriors like herself, willing to follow her into danger. They called her the Keeper of the Horn, a name she embraced not as a title of pride, but as a burden of responsibility. Each time she lifted it, she reminded them, we rise not for ourselves but for the generations that come after us. And so, the shadow of Nanny produced not only fear in the hearts of the British, but faith in the hearts of our own people. That faith carried General Abeng forward, transforming her from a follower into a leader. Her name spread quietly, carried in the wind with the sound of her horn. The Abeng, once used to summon and signal, now became a weapon of psychological war. The British called it a curse. To the Maroons, it was the call of freedom. General Abeng mastered the art of timing. She would sound the horn in valleys where no soldiers waited, sending redcoat patrols marching endlessly into empty hills. She blasted it at night, letting the echoes bounce until the British could not tell whether they were surrounded or merely haunted by sound. At dawn, she blew it again, and warriors emerged from the mist to strike. The redcoats began to dread the horn more than the musket. A bullet could kill one man, but the horn destroyed the courage of hundreds. Men whispered to their commanders that when they heard it, their hands trembled, their legs weakened, and their shots went astray. Yet the Abeng was not only terror. To her people, it was life. It called farmers from fields when danger came. It rallied hunters to defend the villages. It reminded every Maroon child that though the British claimed the land, the mountains still belonged to them. General Abeng herself became inseparable from the sound. Children carved small horns in her likeness. Songs rose about the woman who carried an echo like thunder. And though she remained humble, she accepted the truth. The horn had chosen her, and through it, she became a symbol. The Redcoats soon discovered their nightmare was no longer confined to one battlefield. As Nanny launched attacks in one region, Abeng struck in another. The British tried to concentrate their forces, but each time they advanced toward Nanny's stronghold, their supply lines were cut by Abeng's warriors. Her raids were ruthless in their precision. She learned where the British stored their powder and seized it. She tracked their movements by smoke, by footprints, by the careless chatter of tired soldiers. And when the moment came, she struck swiftly and vanished. To the British, it seemed impossible. How could Nanny fight in two places at once? Rumors spread that she had the power to multiply herself, to command an army of shadows. In truth, it was General Abeng, fighting not as a rival but as a mirror flame, ensuring the enemy never rested. For the Maroons, the dual attacks meant hope. They saw that resistance was not tied to a single leader. If one flame was extinguished, another would rise. The Redcoats might crush a camp, but the war lived on in another valley, in another horn. It was a lesson Abeng carried deeply. Freedom is not the voice of one, it is the chorus of many. As the war dragged on, fact and legend twisted together. British officers swore that Abeng's horn could summon storms. Her warriors disappeared like smoke, that even the trees bent to shield her. In their diaries, they wrote of a phantom woman whose blasts turned muskets into dead weight and turned courage into terror. Among her people, the stories were different. They said the horn carried the voices of ancestors. That when Abeng sounded it, the spirits of the stolen and the enslaved rose to fight beside her. Elders claimed that the horn was not carved by hands, but given by the earth itself, to be blown only by one chosen to defend freedom. General Abeng herself never denied the legends. She let them grow, knowing that in war, belief is as powerful as gunpowder. Every rumor weakened her enemies and strengthened her people. The more mythical she became, the harder it was for the empire to contain her. And so, the keeper of the horn lived as woman and myth, flesh and echo, soldier and spirit. When the battles ended, treaties written, and years passed, Nanny of the Maroons stood eternal in history, recognized as Jamaica's national heroine, a symbol of resistance. General Abeng, by contrast, became a whisper. Some doubted she had ever lived. Others claimed she was only a legend invented to frighten the British. But the truth lies somewhere between. She was real enough to wound the empire, and mythical enough to inspire generations. She modeled herself on Nanny, and in doing so, ensured that resistance was never the work of one woman alone. Her story reminds us that courage is never solitary. It multiplies. It spreads. One flame lights another. Nanny was a mother, but Abeng was the echo, a second storm born from the first, a horn whose sound refused to die. Even now, when the Abeng horn is blown in Jamaica, some say they hear not only the call of Nanny, but the spirit of the keeper of the horn. And the echo of freedom carries further than any musket, further than any empire, further than fear itself. She was called General Abeng, the keeper of the horn. The story of Nanny is written in history. The story of General Abeng is written in legend. Together, they remind us that resistance is never the voice of one, but the echo of many. And when the horn is blown, its call carries through time, a call to courage, a call to unity, a call to never bow before oppression. This is the legacy of the keeper of the horn. If you were inspired by this story, join us on our journey through Africa and the diaspora, uncovering hidden heroes, untold legends, and voices history tried to silence. Don't forget to like, subscribe to Cennentertainment, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next story of courage and resistance. And tell us in the comments, do you believe General Abeng was real or a legend born from Nanny's shadow? Your voice keeps history alive.